From Parsons, the MA Fashion Studies major. And within the context of COVID-19, I've been really interested in the discourses that have been arising about fashion looking forward. So I've been spending a lot of time listening to podcasts and doing a lot of reading in terms of what people's expectations are for what the fashion industry is going to look like, and the hopes that are out there for a more equitable and environmentally sustainable fashion industry. Within the context of that, I've been particularly interested in the individual's ability to intervene within that space. So thinking about the potency of fashion consumption practices, and how individuals might be able to take some level of power over what the industry is going to be looking like. So during this last semester, I was in a fashion cultures class that was titled Provocations. And within that, I created a manifesto or call to action in terms of my personal consumption practices and what I'm anticipating. And I did this in collaboration with another student. So the particular manifesto I came up with was: my consumption has political ramifications, creates and stimulates economies. My consumption always involves exploitation, but it does not have to involve the exploitation of others. My consumption is an act of labor. It is thus an act of production. My consumption is a form of critical engagement. Thus determines my hierarchical location. My consumption is an act of ideological sponsorship. It is bolder than consent. My consumption will be an active process, will modify the predetermined mold. My consumption will be directed toward the concrete. It will be rooted in material and process. And within that, the creation of that particular manifesto, it occurred to me that while I could relay that on directly to other people, there was something particularly empowering and also affecting about the actual process of creating it and kind of uttering that personal approach to my fashion consumption into existence. And so I wanted to really highlight the power of process instead of giving people kind of this ready-made produced object. So instead I decided I wanted to kind of develop a sort of research tool that also acts as a historical document for this time, because a lot of the consumption information that I was coming across within the context of the fashion discourse that's happening right now was operating within kind of broad surveys or trying to leak to historical times of a pandemic and whatnot to kind of try to create some expectations for what people would be doing in the future. But I wanted to actually kind of hear more so from actual individuals and see the diversity in terms of what they were projecting for their future. So instead I decided I wanted to provide a location for critical interventions and develop a mode of engagement for participants that was very aware of our spatial circumstance, the dominant modes of communication that we're employing right now while we're in quarantine, and the contemporary technologies that we have at our disposal, both for production and consumption. So at the bottom, I have the little text message that I sent out to my personal network. I was hoping to put out a call via social media to really kind of get at the part of our contemporary technologies that we have accessible, but the United States is kind of in a crisis beyond COVID at this exact moment. So putting that on social media seemed to be a bit inappropriate for the time period. So I've been instead kind of working within more personal networks and having kind of direct conversations with people to try to arise some level of conversation about like our future fashion consumption. So I have a little video that's actually a clip that I put together of some of the responses that I've gotten from about 10 individuals.
I think when the crisis began, people were thrown into a chaos, and as a result, day-to-day things, including fashion, have kind of become less about making outward statements and more about finding solace in the small things that bring comfort.
I think I have spent more time with myself than I have ever wanted to.
I first just think back to the beginning times of how refreshing it was to be able to wear pajamas and comfy clothes all day long.
I'm just wearing just kind of like pajama clothes, you know.
During COVID and the quarantine, I've worn only clothes that I had already owned.
I have definitely been appreciative of each piece of clothing that I have that I get to wear out on a special occasion.
I think it's given me more time to look into my closet more and pick out new outfits and new ways to wear things and mix and match things.
I was just mindlessly buying clothes after clothes, not thinking about where they came from and not thinking about the clothes I had sitting at the bottom of the drawer for the past 5 years.
Even though I am tempted to redo my entire wardrobe, I think that the world would be a better place if I didn't.
My future relationship with clothing will be something that is more minimal and limited, in that I don't feel the need to hide parts of my body I feel self-conscious about, if that makes sense.
So, like, in a sense, I've kind of gotten a better sense of me and who I am, and I think my clothing will continue to reflect a more confident sense of self once this all passes.
So yes, within the context of that, put out a call for action that specifically operated within the context of iPhone voice memos, because just about everybody that I know has some level of technology that would allow them to participate in that way, and wanted to operate primarily through sound bites instead, because I personally, within the context of quarantine, kind of retreated to sound in a lot of ways. I would turn off the lights in my room and listen to sound bites of spoken word and things like that to kind of transform the space that I was in. And it felt like a very intimate way of kind of connecting to other people, even though we are so distanced from one another, and a particularly intimate way to kind of get people to talk and hear from one another about how they're planning on wearing for the future. So right now I'm still kind of deciding how I want to archive these different sound bites, and the next steps I'm taking with that. Part of me wants to try to conserve a level of anonymity for the participants. That way, those who are continuing to participate have an extra level of comfort diving into the more intimate aspects of their dress practices during this time. Potentially going to make a SoundCloud profile where this can all essentially just be listed indefinitely. So maybe in another 50 years, if people want to, if something comes up again, they can have an idea of how individuals were kind of planning their consumption methods going forward and everything as well. So if you would like to participate in this, feel free to shoot me an email with a little soundbite about 2 minutes long that explains kind of the specifics for how you've been wearing your clothing and what your anticipations are for going forward.
Thank you, Tzuni. There are some comments. First, we thought if we were missing an image, but it seems like voice only, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Entirely voice.
So yes, Susan Sandler comments, powerful with the use of voice sound in conjunction with the black screen, creates almost more association. And there is a question or comment from Elizabeth Fisher. To complement your project, looked at the fashion journalist Sophie Fontanelle's IG account for Lobes, I think. She asked people to send in pictures of their favorite piece of confinement clothing with a comment in writing.
I love that. Okay, I definitely will check that out. Thank you.
Yeah, but I think quite a lot of such projects have been mentioned already today, and there are some other to follow. So it seems like, yes, people are trying to document and archive. So we have this, fantastic chance to actually put things together.